Friends, in our last episode, we discussed some essential challenges confronting our EDs. In this episode, however, we will tackle some policies and standards and as well discuss some solutions to these problems. So let's jump right in. Well, in 2011, Ghana's Ministry of Health created its policy and guidelines for hospital accident and emergency services. In it, the government offers guidance regarding the physical structure, staffing and stocking of functional emergency units. It also mandates a triage-based screening for emergencies, prohibits facilities from requesting payment within the first 48 hours of hospitalization for an emergency, and proposes avenues for financing EDs. Clinical standards and quality improvements are key elements of these set standards, and all emergency departments must adhere to them. These standards help the EDs to be places of excellence to optimize patient care. What are the basic standards and what is happening in terms of compliance with these standards?
In terms of policies that guide the practice or the emergency ward, or the Ministry of Health has developed a policy that directs the activities of the emergency units. The Constitution, I would say that there are provisions in the Constitution also that guides our practice. Again, we also adopt certain protocols from international community. WHO is one that guides the practice of emergency. You also need to make sure that your protocols are in place so that they so guide practice and ensure that we do away with errors at the ED. We need to have a very good collaboration, as I said earlier, good collaboration with other departments, because yours is to resuscitate and then move these patients to the various units where care continues. So you need to have good collaboration with these units, these departments, to ensure that work flow easily. Another thing I would like to talk about is security at the emergency. Security at the emergency is very important. You need to ensure that relatives are regulated. People do not walk into the ED and then walk out anyhow. These people must be regulated for safety reasons. Again, you need to be monitoring your KPIs. When I mean your KPIs, your key performance indicators. You need to be monitoring them. What's the bed occupancy rate? What's the average length of stay? All these things need to be monitored because they help you to be able to plan, they help you to be able to put in measures to ensure that you are meeting your targets. Supervision and regular training for staff is important at the emergency. I would say that you need to supervise. You, the leader, you need to supervise. You need to ensure that things are going on the same way you planned it. And you also need to organize training, regular training for your staff to update their knowledge, to update their skills, to ensure that quality work can be delivered at all times.
Emergency nursing or medicine started gaining ground in Ghana with the Ghana Health Service initiating specialty areas to help improve skill sets in the management of cases. In collaboration with Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology and the University of Michigan, the government of Ghana's Ministry of Health helps train physicians, nurses, and technicians in emergency care. With about 30 nurses graduating every year being trained in emergency nursing, one cannot doubt that this is a positive development for Ghana, but it's not enough to train all the staff we need. Nevertheless, we should be glad that we are on the right path when it comes to skill set development.
You realize that many of staff working in many EDs are not trained in emergency medicine or nursing. So there's that inadequate emergency personnel in many EDs, and this affects work greatly.
The A&E must be manned by competent and committed healthcare professionals, and Ghana will eventually get there. However, staffing and bed capacity continue to be big challenges.
Some of the things I think the government should do to help emergency services in my country is that they need to sponsor all emergency personnel going for training, because I know currently they sponsor doctors or the emergency physicians. So I believe if they're able to sponsor the emergency nurses too, it means that we can train more, and that will boost the strength currently at the emergency department.
But quality care and resource availability need proper financing. There will be a large gap in quality care if financial support is lacking. According to the Ghana Health Service and the MOH, all health facilities shall provide accident and emergency services. Thus, all persons in Ghana have the right to receive quality accident and emergency care. But how do we provide this kind of care if we lack all these resources? Financial considerations continue to be a barrier to initial treatment of the patient. The government of most countries are the main stakeholders and financiers of public health hospitals. Apart from that, the National Health Insurance Authority, private partners and NGOs support in their own ways. Even in spite of these many sources, the required help is not forthcoming. The effects of little support for this department affects every patient. In conformity with the Ministry of Health policy, all accident and emergency patients should be attended to without requesting for money during the first 48 hours.
Again, I think we need an emergency fund, okay, that would support or take care of some emergency bills, for especially patients who cannot afford emergency services. The health insurance alone, even though I'll say it's helping, but it's not able to cover all the expenses most of the times, and that also make our work difficult. And again, I think there should be motivational packages for those who work at the emergency. The government should consider maybe some allowances for people who work at the emergency.
Many of our EDs are ill-structured and ill-resourced, which is a worrying trend. Unfortunately, many souls have walked out of their bodies because of the substandard care they got on arrival as a result of this shortcoming. To mitigate the shortcomings, we need a holistic approach. One way is to ensure strict monitoring and evaluation of the system.
It wouldn't be proper to talk about problems without providing solutions to them. I think the government have a part to play, the hospital management of the concerned hospitals, and then the staff working in the emergency department have a part to play. Now, coming to the government, it's been proven that in most nations of the world, that the highest level of government in terms of health, the highest office of health tends to outperform those of lower cadres. So it will be also necessary that these highest echelons, these highest levels can also undertake direct supervisions if possible. It may seem overwhelming, but they can allocate specific personnel that can ensure the supervision of the activities of the stocking of the equipment and of the of ensuring that resources are available in the emergency department. And one of the ways these things could be achieved is by carrying out, episodic audits, which could be monthly, quarterly in a year, and so on and so forth, to see how much, allocated resources are being used in making the necessary equipment that is needed for care available. And then we can also look at the place of liaising with international, world bodies by the government, to make sure that, the up-to-date know-how on how to run an emergency department, that the hospital setting concerned, or the healthcare setting concerned, is implementing them. And it must, because of the difference in terrain across many geographical areas, and what could happen is that these policies can now be streamlined according to what is suitable, to the setting concerned, without having to water the standards down, because the principles can be the same, but the methods of application can differ. And now down to the hospital management. One of the problems we see a good number of the times is that in some hospital management, you see that in the board of people that make decisions, a good number of people there may not even be people who have an integral knowledge about the overall day-to-day running of what goes on in various departments within a particular facility. And then top much of the emergency department. So I believe that in the decision making board of the hospital management, because the ED plays an important role, there should be a representative there. Possibly there should be, who can give the management insight into what goes on in the emergency department and their the needs for this equipment.
Staff also need a training to prolong the life of the types of equipment.
Another thing there also is that the hospital management, sometimes they get an equipment and they just leave it in the hands of staff, and some of these staffs are not quite well trained in how to effectively maneuver these equipment. Now, the hospital management can also do a good job in, when they procure equipment, they make sure that the necessary staff that would train the staff to be able to use this equipment, that they are there, so that when they are well trained to use this equipment, the equipment can last more, and so on and so forth. Then the next thing we can also look at is when they are budgeting. When the budgeting is being done, the emergency department should be given priority. In the budgeting, because that would go a long way to help in improving outcomes for patients that come on a day-to-day basis to the emergency department, as equipment will be made available. Another thing the hospital management can also do is liaising with the government in matters of equipping the emergency department. They can be sending audits to the government to actually make the government aware of areas where they need help with respect to stocking the emergency department with the equipment that is needed.
What should the staff also do?
So the staff should limit wastages as much as is possible, because when these resources are made available, it is also possible that they are being used as they ought not to be, and because of that, these resources tend to get exhausted, faster than they should. A routine audit should be carried out to look into how staff are using most of these things. And the other thing also the staff could also do is that there should be a routine way of checking on a daily basis what is available, and then ordering of stock ahead of time, before these resources get run out. And that thing also is that an emergency pathway can be set up for sourcing of resources when resources have run out. If resources run out, there should be a sort of pathway or plan in place which can help in alternatively sourcing resources when they are lacking. Another thing that could be done is that various emergency departments can be linked up various emergency departments across, districts in the same place can be linked up. There can be a sort of there can be something like a network of emergency departments, and these networks can be among staff, among hospital management as well. And what they could do is, there should be an awareness of what resources is available, not just within a hospital, but within a whole, geopolitical region, and so on and so forth. So that if a particular resource is more abundant in one place, it can be made, universally abundant in other places where these resources are lacking, and the fast, pathway of easy accessibility can be set up for, getting these resources to where they are needed as fast, as possible. And everybody has a part to play, whether they are, even patients have a part to play. Patients can give feedback to the appropriate, bodies, to or maybe to the staff, to the hospital management, even to the government, to create awareness that these problems, that they exist. And this would go a long way to, alleviate these issues and bring about a more solid, a more established healthcare system.
Well, as I said earlier, because of substandard care, many people have died in the ED. That is to say that very essential items are missing from the environment, and most especially the trolleys on which the equipment is kept. Drugs and instruments are not the best. It is important for stakeholders to pay attention to these areas. Procurement officers and ward in charges must ensure that the right items are purchased and stocked. Indeed, the government must turn their head towards our EDs, and various civil organizations must make it a point to contribute financially to the development of their EDs.
If I have the chance to change my ED, my aim would be directed towards making the departments a one-stop shopping center. What do I mean by that? It should be a place where all services can be provided. Talking about radiological services, talking about laboratory services, talking about pharmaceutical services. All these services should be provided within the emergency. We don't need to send patients to far places to be able to do radiological investigations or laboratory investigations. Everything should be done at the ED. Another thing is to have a well-developed orientation program for all newly recruited staff that will come to the emergency. And this will be designed in a way that there will be proper mentorship for newly recruited staff. Again, another thing I would like to do is to have more protocols developed, to have more nurses and doctors trained in the area. And then we can also talk about enhancing the collaboration with other peripheral facilities. Okay, we need to have a very good call center that's able to coordinate all calls that comes from all facilities to our ED. Another thing is to have a very good bed management system, so that we can be able to say goodbye to this no bed syndrome that is affecting care delivery in recent times. Also, because of the burnouts at the ED, staff welfare is very critical, and I think that we should have an improved access to psychological care. Many of our staff who work at the ED go through psychological stress, and both physical and psychological stress. I think we need to help them to have access to psychological care. Another thing that I also do, if I have the opportunity, is to provide all the gadgets that are needed to ensure quality emergency service in the departments. So if I have the opportunity to change things, I think these are the few things I'll do to ensure quality emergency services at the emergency department. Thank you.
When the need comes, it wouldn't matter whether you are a pastor, politician, doctor, or even a president. A major gap in emergency care would certainly end your life or change it negatively for the rest of it. You never know when your body will break your soul from itself because someone did not get the equipment to keep it in place. So, you and I must advocate and ensure our EDs become well equipped to keep to standard practice. Then, at least, we could be confident that we will survive any unforeseen health problems. It's been McCaffrey.